morning, everyone.
Morning.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mo Oyetunji, and you're welcome to the AFB Transition Spirit event run through of interview sessions. So we're going to be having the morning session and we're going to be having the afternoon session. And just a few people on the board from Spirit Energy. I'm going to be introducing Susan Gracing. Hi, Susan. Susan is the Director of Resourcing Talent, D&I, and also the L&D at Spirit Energy. We also have Ross Davison, who's going to be taking, he's the Head of Communications. He's going to be taking the brand new session much later on. We also have a few people, Joy Aboje, and we also would be playing a video from Dean. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about AFBE. Sorry, can everybody hear me? I'm not sure.
Yes.
So AFB Transition is actually, AFB Scotland was actually formed in 2011, and we formed the branch of it, Transition, which was to provide an avenue for job applicants when you just finish university, and also prospective interview candidates to launch yourselves into the professional world. So we're teaming up today with Spirit Energy, who have been really, you know, they really helped in putting together this event. And they're going to be speaking this morning, the different people on the board, and in the afternoon session, they'll be taking interviews. So I'm just gonna start with Susan, but before I go ahead, we want to ask volunteers who would love to give a feedback and a survey after this event to kindly send an email to info@afb.org.uk. Would also be laying some ground rules. So if you can please mute your audio if you're not speaking, that would be really beneficial. If you can also put your name as what you have registered with, that would be really good. We also want to ask you that you come, so there'll be different sessions in the afternoon, but I'm going to come in after the talk to speak a little bit about it. And after that, we'll tell you how the afternoon session will run through. So now I'm just going to introduce Susan Gracing, who would be giving a talk. She's the Director of Resourcing.
Thanks, Mo. Morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all here today. My name is Susan Grayson, and I'm Director of Resourcing, Talent, Diversity and Inclusion and Learning and Development at Spirit Energy. Now, back in 2019, I was really excited to manage to finally get us partnered with AFBE, and since then we've started doing some events with AFBE, but I'm really excited this morning to be on our first of many, I hope, transition events with AFBE. The reason we joined or partnered with AFBE was really to get a step towards becoming a more inclusive employer. At Spirit, we want to be an inclusive place for everyone. So a place that everyone enjoys coming to every day to work and can be their best self. Part of that, you know, creating that inclusive environment is having a senior leadership team who are engaged and authentic and really want to make our workplace an inclusive environment. They also work with our employee networks, who I think you're going to meet quite a few of today. And with that partnership, we managed to create an environment in Spirit where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their background. Dean Marks is our Director of HR and Communications, and he really wanted to be here today. He is the executive lead on the Ethnicity Network, but he was just unable to be here this morning. But he did actually spend time whilst on his trip out of the country to create a video for you this morning. So he's given us some insight and inspiration to start the day. So with that, I will hand over to Dean.
Thanks, Susan. Hello and welcome everyone to our first virtual Spirit Energy hosted AFBE transition event. Firstly, introductions. My name is Dean Marks and I'm the HR Director for Spirit Energy. I'm also proud to be the executive sponsor of Spirit's Ethnicity Network. I've been in my role for 2.5 years now. A little bit more about me and some of my experiences later on. I wish I could be with you in real time today, but unfortunately I can't. However, I want to be part of this important occasion, and so here I am. Firstly, a big thank you to everyone involved in creating this important event, and to each of you for choosing to participate. You all had a choice, and it's a pleasure to see that you all signed up and are here today. Having seen the agenda, I know that you're in for a great day, and I look forward to hearing your feedback in due course. So, the transition to the world of work. It's a big and important step, and I would offer it's more important and exciting, yes, exciting now than ever before. Today, our objective is to provide insights for a number of my colleagues, together with the opportunity to develop some skills such that at the end of the day, you are more equipped than you are at the moment to continue with your own personal transition to the world of work. Yes, the current impact of COVID on our lives can seem daunting, but even in my relatively short working life, that's 30 years, we've faced and grown as we have overcome many significant challenges. For example, the deindustrialisation of the UK economy under the Margaret Thatcher government of the 80s. Here, 3 million people were unemployed, and people were asking, where are all the new jobs going to come from? What's the future going to be? We had the September 11th terrorist attacks and the Gulf War. More recently, the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. After 20 years, I had decided to leave BP in 2008, and all the job opportunities I was pursuing pretty much disappeared in a matter of weeks. However, new opportunities arose, and despite a number of rejections due to the fierce competition, I kept on trying, and eventually I secured a global HR role in an Indian private equity company who were taking advantage of the fluid capital markets to expand. Lastly, I would add, just look at where the UK was just prior to lockdown, virtually full employment, and I have every confidence we'll get there again. New opportunities will come to the marketplace. So if you're feeling anxious about your future, as I've mentioned earlier, I'm confident we will emerge from this. Now let me paint a picture of a glimpse of the future, and hence the importance in you taking action now in best preparing yourselves for it. I would probably say, in your parents' or grandparents' generation, life was fairly simple and comprised of a period of education, a period of work or career, and then a period of retirement. And that generation learnt in order to work. Your world, however, is far more fluid and fast-paced. You're going to continually learn, unlearn what you've learned, adapt, relearn, unlearn what you've learned, adapt. I expect you're going to work in order to continually learn, to rise up to the many challenges you will face over the course of your working life. It was perfectly normal for many people just 1 or 2 generations ago to really just work for a small number of companies their whole working life, possibly just one. I have only worked for 4 companies, BP, GMR, the Indian private equity company, Centrica, and now Spirit Energy. I expect you to have a more fluid relationship with your employers, and hence you need to be prepared to move. And by learning, unlearning, adapting, you'll be in a better shape to move to different companies. Now let's come back to your career choices. Please don't expect everything you want when you want it, but I would encourage each and every one of you to clearly understand what you enjoy, as we tend to be motivated to do well in things that we enjoy. So determine what it is that you enjoy and gives you a purpose, and target this for your career choices. Don't be surprised if you make some changes on the way. For example, I studied economics and then went on to do a master's in economics. Yet in reality, I was getting bored of economics. However, from my studies, I developed a deep interest in people and how people were such huge assets to companies. So I decided to step away from pure economics and pursue a career in HR. My advice here, please don't invest your career in something you don't enjoy or have a deep motivation to pursue. Have the courage to change course if you're not enjoying the course you're on. I've spent my career developing my skills to enable my employers to select the people that will perform well in an organization and to support their personal growth. You could say I have a passion and motivation for supporting people to grow. In addition to motivation, we need to be agile. As we've seen this year, the pace of change in the world around us is increasing. Whereas, for example, in the Victorian era, an environment lasted a generation, for example, the Industrial Revolution. Today, each of you can expect to see 4 or 5 different paradigm shifts in your lifetime. Your agility to respond and thrive will be key to your success. For example, my career started off with a focus on HR process and HR policy. Those aspects of the HR role have now largely become automated, and my role requires a completely different skill set, focusing on significant emotional intelligence, something we can't get from a machine. With agility, you must also be prepared to adapt. Over the past few months, we have seen great successes in many adapting to a new virtual working world. This isn't going to go to reverse. Expect to continue to see your doctor virtually. A doctor can see more patients remotely without the need to bring a lot of sick people together in the doctor's surgery. Why would we go back to the way it was? As I've said to my team, pre-COVID, the talk was all about work-life balance and the never-ending upward creep of working hours and the toll on our people. Now conversations are about fitting work around our lives, our children, our hobbies, our interests. We all need to spend more time working alone, but having clarity on purpose when we come together. So leaving you here, I would encourage you all to have a clear motivation to do what it is you want to do. Do the stuff you enjoy, but don't be afraid of changing course. Be agile and adaptive to the increasing pace of change. Don't try and resist change. I'm afraid change will win. With all that, I'm confident you'll be ready to thrive in the world of work. But remember, your world of work will be very different to mine and that of your parents. Yes, the immediate outlook may look daunting, but we'll get through this. Use this time to prepare yourselves for many opportunities that will present themselves in the future. Over the course of the day, I hope you will equip yourself with some new skills from which to succeed. Best of success.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, was that clear for everyone?
Yes, it was. It was. I hope it was for everyone else.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dean.
Excellent.
What I really learned from that was don't be afraid for change, which I think was really which I think was really awesome. Just moving on, we'll be taking a break at 10, but I'm just going to introduce Ross Davidson, who is the Communications Director at Spirit Energy, and he's going to be taking the brand use session. We all talk about branding, and he's going to be doing a very good job on that, speaking to us about brand use session. But before I introduce him, I'm just going to speak on the ground rules again for those who just joined. If you can please mute your microphones and change your profile name. At the end of the session, we'll be taking a survey, which I'll speak on later on, about how you found the session. So if you have any questions, please drop it in the chat or type it, but afterwards we'll be taking questions. So Ross Davidson, welcome.
Thank you, Mo, and good morning, everyone. As Mo said, my name's Ross. I'm the Head of Communications at Spirit Energy. As the title suggests, my team and I lead on all of Spirit's communications, whether that be internal to our employees or external. So our website, our social media channels, engagement with the media, local community, and other stakeholder relations as well. Picking up on Dean's point from his video, it's something that we're all very, very passionate about. We all love telling the story of Spirit Energy and the story of our people. You know, it's an industry, I think, with some really fascinating stories, which can be quite technical, if I'm going to be blunt. And making this industry as accessible as possible is something that really drives me and our team. And really at the heart of what we do is communicating about Spirit Energy and what makes Spirit stand out from the crowd. So with that segue, I will open up my slides, which hopefully everyone can see.
Yes.
Marvelous, thank you. So my session today is not about how you communicate about a company, as me and my team do. It's about how you communicate your story. We're all familiar with the idea of brands in the corporate sense. So in my living room at the moment, Yamaha, Sonos, Samsung. But in the same way that these brands I've just described in your mind about what those brands mean, what they stand for, what they're about, we can do that for ourselves as well. We can create our own personal brand. So first of all, it's fair to say that Where's Wally does not work in social distancing. But now more than ever, the job market, it looks a lot like this. It's really, really tough to stand out, and employers don't really know their wallies from their windbreak. So it's really important for you to stand your own way as much as possible. Peering very intently at your screen, trying to figure out where Wally is. Just to get that agony out of the way before we move on. So, what is your personal brand? Jeff Bezos at Amazon describes it as what people say about you when you're out of the room. You may have heard the phrase "how you show up."
Sorry.
All heard about how.
Sorry, Ross.
Yep.
Your mic seems to be dropping out.
Any better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's gone off again.
All heard about how important it is to make a good first impression, and you'll maybe hear more about that during the later interview sessions. And you know what people say about when you're out of the room, how you show up, making that first impression. I would say that's all part of your personal brand. It can be in how you dress, and you see Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook there. He's rarely seen out of a grey t-shirt, jeans, and trainers. He's got 20 identical grey t-shirts, which makes for a boring wardrobe, I suspect, but at least he's consistent. It's part of his brand, and by extension, part of his company's brand. It's relaxed, it's informal, a Silicon Valley kind of tech culture, which makes you think Facebook would be an interesting place to work. With Mark, though, how he looks doesn't always marry up with his style, which can be quite robotic and can actually be damaging in certain areas. Facebook's been accused of being too relaxed about privacy, about fake news, fake accounts, and you wonder when he's appearing in front of Senate hearings and in forums like that, you know, does the brand that he's built up over time have a part to play in that perception of Facebook? As well as how you show up, it's about communication. How you communicate, where you communicate. I had a boss who swore a lot as part of the brand, and it's not to everyone's taste. Speaking of not to everyone's taste, others communicate through a megaphone and use language to deliberately shock or gain attention. It's not to everyone's taste, as I say, but it can be effective. Coming back to personal branding versus the same way that companies will brand themselves to set themselves apart from competitors, people absolutely. Personal branding allows you to stand out in really competitive environment. It's not a competition to see how visible you can become. It's not about trying to attract as much views, likes, follows as possible. About how you as an individual can and it really helps frame how you manage your career.
Sorry, Ross. Your sound is breaking up every time you're speaking. I'm just wondering, is it worthwhile that Trudy shares your slides and you speak? Because it seems that when you're not changing slides, it seems to be okay. So I'm just wondering whether that will help, Ross. Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. Thanks for letting me know, Mustafa. Sorry for that. Chidi, do you have a copy of my slides?
Yes, I do. I'll just get them now. Just
thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So your brand helps employers identify whether you're the right fit for their team. And also helps you. It helps you identify whether that employer is the right fit for you, and whether culturally that's the kind of place that you would want to work. I mentioned earlier that Facebook feels like a good place to work. Maybe not for everybody. The thing I would stress here is that your brand has to be authentic. It needs to be you. No one should be someone that they're not. But you need to be consciously aware of the brand you are sharing with the world. Like my old boss, who swore a lot, you know, it showed he cared. It showed that, you know, he was passionate about what he did. But If you took him out of the workplace environment where that worked, then he's in later jobs has really struggled because he has had a culture clash with the people that he's worked with. But when the right employer sees your brand and they like your brand, they will not be able to see past it. And all you've done is be yourself. So for most of us who don't have thousands of followers on Twitter, then we're not the president of the United States or chief executive of one of the most famous companies in the world. We need to establish our brand and set ourselves apart in the tools that we do have available to us. Like the president, the easiest way to do this is via social media, and for professional purposes, it's LinkedIn. I can guarantee that employers will search for you on social media, particularly on LinkedIn, as part of a recruitment process, as part of a hiring process. And this is your chance to make a good first impression before you even meet them. So I guess for some basics, on LinkedIn, a picture is critical. It makes your profile 21 times more likely to be viewed. You're 9 times more likely to get action requests. You don't need to have your arms folded in the photo, but a photo of you, just of you, preferably in a kind of work attire or what you would wear to go to work, really does go a long way right out of the gate to setting you apart from other people on that channel. Actually, there's a lot of profiles that still don't have a photo, and I've got that grey silhouette, so it does make a massive difference. And the other part of your LinkedIn profile, which can really make a massive difference, is the biography section. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that just now and how you might be able to bring that together and use that to advertise your brand. And Mo, if you're able to go to the next slide, please. So I've got a few examples here, and I don't know if we share the slides afterwards because that might be a little bit difficult to read on smaller screens. But I was at an event just before lockdown where Sarah Smith, who's a Scotland editor at the BBC, was one of the presenters, and all the presenters, their biographies were laid out in the programme for the event beforehand. So this is Sarah's bio that was shared beforehand, and there's very specific career highlights in there. There's some great talking points that if you were to ever have a conversation with Sarah, there's no danger that you're going to be able to start a conversation with her about something, you know, being held at gunpoint by terrorists in Belfast. Not everyone's got quite such a career journey as Sarah, but there are certainly some things in there that make you raise your eyebrows and really grab your attention. And her values come through as well in her bio as well. In that final line, she speaks about the arts and supporting the John Smith Memorial Trust, which works on social justice, and sharing some of her voluntary work, some of herself outside of her day job, really goes above and beyond what you might know of her from her professional role. If we go to the next slide, and I'm really sorry to anybody who knows Nick or Peter, but Nick and Peter were speaking at the same event. And you can see for a start that their bios are much, much shorter. There's a flavor of their career highlights in there, but there's really no hint of what drives them, what they're passionate about. It's very, very straight, very matter of fact, and it's really just a rundown of what they've done before without any hint of if they wanted to, if they enjoyed it, if it's what they intended to go into as a career. It's Sarah's bio definitely stood out for the right reasons. Nick's and Peter's do stand out for different reasons. So if we go to the next slide, and how you might build your biography and how you write and get comfortable about writing about your achievements. Brand comes into it, and that's one element we'll come to in a moment, but the other two elements are credibility and personality. If we take each of those in turn and break it down, there's a few questions that you might ask yourself in each of these areas, which helps frame the kind of information that you might want to put in your bio. So if we go to the first one, if we're able to go to the next slide again, thanks, Mo. Credibility. So it's really about establishing what you know, what you can bring, what you're good at, And your career path is one thing, and years of experience is another. But drill down into what those experiences were and make it as tangible as possible. With that in mind, the key question here for me is the final one. What facts prove my success? I used to be a journalist, and I've been accused of having a flexible interpretation of the word facts in the past. But for me, a fact doesn't just need to be numbers. It's not cost savings or distinctions or grades, although, of course, they all count as well. What about a quote from a senior manager or a lecturer or a boss, a colleague or a classmate about how they felt about working with you, about the kind of work that you deliver? It's not bragging if you're quoting somebody else and someone else said how good a job you've done. And I would call that fact as well, because they've said it. So all you're doing is reporting the fact. And a testimonial like that can be just as powerful as the pounds and pence that you might have saved off a budget or delivering a project ahead of time. So on to the next slide, your brand. If we come back to the Jeff Bezos quote from earlier on and what people say about you when you're out of the room, hopefully these questions on the screen just now help frame for you what you want those things to be. And I've worked with people who, when they're not in the room, their brand becomes very, very clear from what other people say. They're a gossip, they've got great attention to detail, they take credit for other people's work, they'll always go the extra mile, they don't work well in a team, but work brilliantly on their own, and they're cool and calm under pressure. As mentioned earlier, your brand will not be to everyone's taste. From the examples I've just listed, working well in a team might not matter so much if your delivery as a solo artist is so strong. But make sure when you're answering these questions and working those answers into your biography, you're doing so with intent and it's deliberate, and you're getting across that message that you want the person who's reading your biography on LinkedIn or in your CV, they're getting the messages that you want to land. So on to the next slide. And the final point here in terms of building your bio is personality. And everybody's got a personality. And this is really about getting under the skin of who you are as a person and what drives you. It can be really difficult for someone's personality to come across in the written word and for it to translate properly. And you sometimes need to go over the top just to land it. And I wouldn't be shy about that. I think if you look at the bios from earlier and Sarah's versus Peter and Nick's, there's absolutely no doubt that, Nick and Peter have got personalities. It's just that they need to dial it up in their biography. And they need to talk a bit more about what is their passion, what matters to them. Why do they get out of bed in the morning? Yeah, if you don't go far enough in dialing up your personality, then your bio can be at risk of looking more like theirs. And as I say, their bios just don't do them justice, I don't think. So skipping onto the next slide, and I guess this is just watchwords to potentially avoid. Mostly these are here because they're so well worn and well used that they're cliches now. For me, there's one in particular that always makes me smile, and it's extensive experience. You can have extensive experience of doing something badly. It doesn't actually prove anything. So trying to avoid these, but not avoid the intent, perhaps. You can say all of these things and make all of these points, but in different ways. For example, successful. The facts that we talked about earlier can prove that point for you. You don't need to say, I am successful. Your delivery will stand that up on its own, and people will get it. So I've got 2 more slides to share, and this is a bit of full disclosure here, really. In terms of a before and after of my own biography. Now, the after is still by no means perfect and absolutely needs more work on it. There's more that I need to do to it, but I wanted to share my before and after so you could see kind of an example from somebody who, sorry, excuse me, my computer's just locked itself, so I'm just going to let myself back in again. yeah, you can see an example from somebody who's, you know, a before and after and a contrast between the two. So in this first one, you know, there's none of what I'm passionate about comes across at all. I've not even used full sentences. It's very, very straightforward, and there's no personality at all. It's yeah, it's a rundown of things that I've done before. It's far closer to Nick and Peter's bios than it is to something that really gets under the skin of who I am and what's important to me. So in my final slide is the bio that I have on LinkedIn today. Which, as I say, still needs some work. It's probably actually gone too far the other way now, and it's a little bit too long. But there's some things that I've got in there that are very, very deliberate. You know, going through my career path, but also talking about some of the things that some of the sectors I covered when I was a journalist. And again, I've picked these very deliberately. Energy, because I work in it just now. Transport, food and drink and retail. I've picked those because in my career and future, I'd love to work in those sectors. So showing that I've got experience in those sectors is very deliberate. And again, in the final paragraph, another kind of example of some of the things that get me out of bed in the morning about the job that I do today. You know, going offshore Blue Peter was one of the highlights of my career. And, you know, if you can't put a career highlight in your bio, where can you put it? So, yeah, it's really important to use the things that excite you about your role or about your discipline and really make sure that they come across. So that's it from me. We've got plenty of time for questions before the break. Mo, thank you very much for sharing my slides towards the end there. Mustafa, thank you very much for speaking up and letting me know that my sound wasn't that hot. Hopefully it's been a bit better since I stopped sharing my own slides. But yeah, completely open to any questions that anyone might have about kind of a whistle-stop tour through personal branding. And I'll turn my video back on as well.
So if you have any questions, you want to just either raise your hand or unmute your mic, or drop it in the chat if you don't want to, and I'll pick it up from there. Thank you very much, Ross. That was really insightful.
Could perhaps share my email address for any questions after the event as well. More than happy to take those on email or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can take questions there too. If there's questions that occur to people as the interview process and the rest of the day kind of plays out, more than happy to take questions later on as well.
Okay. Sorry, I just want to, as we're waiting for questions, if anyone has any, can I just please ask if anybody has any videos? I think that's what's kind of slowing down the bandwidth, like on your Zoom profile. If you have any videos on your Zoom profile, can you just kindly turn it off temporarily so that the sharing and the meeting process goes smoothly? Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, please ask it away. And I'm just going to reiterate what I said early on in the morning. At the end of the session, we'll be sharing out a survey from AFBE Scotland about how you've enjoyed this whole session, both the morning and the afternoon one. We also are keen on volunteers, because we've just spoken about branding, haven't we? We're keen on volunteers who want to do a video, so like a vlog on how your experience was both the morning and afternoon session, because I believe the afternoon session is going to be really, really beneficial to everyone. So if you want to volunteer to do a video about this whole experience, if you can send an email to info@afbscotland.org, I'll just have Trudy type that in the chat. And, you know, we'll send you the information on what you ought to do, but it's not going to be a long one, just to say what you've learned and how the experience was for you. And that will be great. So if we don't have any questions, we will be, I mean, Ross, do you mind sharing your email as well in case people want to ask a question or?
Yeah, of course, I'll put it into the chat just now.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll be taking a 15 minutes break and we'll be back at 10, where I will be introducing Ashley McDonald, who will be taking the recruitment behind the scenes session. She's the resourcing specialist at Spirit Energy, and she will be, reeling us through on what really goes on behind the scenes. So if you can be back here at 10, you don't need to actually leave the meeting. You can just turn off your mic, turn off your videos, get a bathroom break, or get some glass of water, and we'll be back at 10 a.m. to continue the session. Thank you, guys. So you're welcome back to the Transition Careers event by Spirit Energy and AFBE-UK. So I'm just going to lay the ground rules again, which I always do. So kindly mute your microphones if you are not speaking or asking a question. If you can, please change your Zoom profile name to your actual name. And if you have any questions while actually speaking, you can just drop it in the chat and we'll pick it up at the end of her talk. But I mean, there will be a session after her session for a Q&A session. And also be mindful of background noise as well, in case you get unmuted. So I will hand over to Ashley MacDonald, who is the resourcing specialist, and she will be talking about recruitment and behind the scenes. Thank you. You're welcome, Ashley.
Hello, everyone. Yes, Ashley MacDonald. I'm the resourcing specialist, as Mo said. I'm letting you see my face just now because I'm going to do a lot of talking over the next hour. I am going to switch off my video just so that we don't encounter, hopefully, any technical issues for doing the presentation for that reason, but also I'll be staring at my other screen the entire time as well. So rather than seeing the side of my face, I thought it's probably easier if I switch off my screen. So I'll do that for you in a moment. But just to set the scene in terms of myself, I've been with Spirit now for 1 year. I have experience with 2 different operators in Aberdeen, a couple of different service companies. I've even worked for the helicopter company that takes everyone offshore. So I've kind of got a good overview of the oil industry. I've also spent quite a bit of time working for a drilling and well engineering consultancy based one in Aberdeen, but also in Dubai for a period of time. So I would say around 15 to 17 years of recruitment experience to date. So I'm going to caveat today's session with this is behind the scenes at Spirit. So obviously different companies will have a different approach to their recruitment. Having said that, there will be quite a few similarities across the board. As Mo said, if you do have any questions, I encourage you to pop them into the chat. Mo, I'll probably ask if you can highlight anything pertinent as we go through, or equally we can try and capture all those questions at the end. And also, I must say, it is a rather strange situation to be speaking into a computer and hearing nothing back for 1 hour. So if there's any technical issues or you need me to clarify anything, please do let me know. I may check in halfway through to make sure that everyone's still there. So bear with me, I'm just going to switch off my camera now so we can get started. Okay, and the first technical hitch is how to move on to the next part of my screen. There we go. Okay, so here's probably a familiar picture in terms of careers fairs. I'm guessing quite a few of you will have attended a variety of careers fairs before. Really, the agenda for today is we're going to be looking at what do we actually look for in a candidate. So we're going to go into some detail about that. We're going to talk about the different parts of the process that we go through. So when it comes to your CV screening, looking at ability testing, and then on to the sort of personality assessment, the occupational personality questionnaires. We'll look for the interview process, providing you some tips, but also looking at how it is that we come up with the questions and the likes of. We'll briefly talk about the assessment centres, and then we'll go on to today's mock interviews for those of you that are taking part. So what are we looking for? So there is a difference between an experienced hire and an early careers hire. So when it comes to an experienced hire, we're very much focusing on your past results and your performance. And this will then dictate potential within the organisation. So we really are honing in on those questions where you can demonstrate the success that you've had in some of your past examples, looking at your performance. This is different. It turns on its head for an early career. So when we're looking at interns, graduates, or entry-level type roles, we're very much focusing on your potential. So your performance and your past results, whilst they are still relevant, they hold less of a relevance in comparison to what your potential could be. Now, there's a few different ways that we measure potential, and that's what we're going to cover today. But really, just to emphasize here, and I know that Ross has obviously mentioned this in his previous session a bit as well, is the personality, your behaviours, your preferred style whilst at work. And we're going to concentrate on that because that really does underpin everything in terms of your performance, your potential and your past results. Your personality has a huge factor. So looking at your first port of call is CV screening. So we've advertised a role. For an early careers role, we will advertise that on various different sites, home in with universities, possibly on GradCracker for a period of time. For a normal role, it will be 2 weeks on a variety of different jobs boards, LinkedIn, and our own website. So we'll get through our CVs. I would say at the moment we are seeing, or we are inundated by applications for every vacancy that we have, which is a great position for us, although it leaves us with the issue of trying to reduce that to a more manageable number, but making sure that we still have those ideal candidates in that candidate pool. So the way that we do that is round one. So on our database, these will come to the recruiter, so the likes of myself and my team, to sift through the CVs. So at this point, this first stage, a manager, the hiring manager, won't have had a chance to see any of the applications because we will do the first sift. We're looking for clear and concise CVs, bullet points, but not just highlighting the duties that you've done. We want a bit more detail, but nice and easy to read. I want, if in reference to a graduate role, I want a degree qualification in a relevant field. And I'm looking for work experience of any kind. Now that work experience could be an internship. It could be that you've worked in a supermarket. I don't necessarily care where you've worked. I care that you have worked and you have had some experience. If not work experience, then some volunteering experience, because that will set the context around transferable skills for us. So this is #1 criteria for us that we looked at when we received about 500 CVs for our intern positions at the start of this year. So this is what I did. And as I say, this is before a manager even gets to set eyes on the candidates. Looking at round two, then this will be with the hiring manager. So I will release the applications through to him or her to review. These ones we're really looking at trying to set candidates aside from those that have achievements or any extracurricular activities. So this is where you're setting your stall out, you're differentiating yourself from everyone else that was in that same course as yourself and across the variety of universities. We're looking for a personal profile that fits well with Spirit's culture. And again, Ross has commented on this, looking at your bio, your personal profile. Does this fit with our culture? Because this part is hugely important, and I'll come on to that. Looking at a cover letter. So if you've made a specific cover letter geared towards Spirit Energy, you've talked about your interest in the internship, the company, and the industry overall, absolutely that will set you aside. So that will take your CVs down to a more manageable number, but still too high to be able to take forward to an interview stage. This is where it takes us to our ability testing. Now, again, as I say, the candidate pool is still quite large. We will use these ability tests and we will use, depending on the type of role, to try and measure your potential over your sort of academic performance. I'll come to that in a moment. So you'll have your different types of tests. So things like your numerical tests, which you'll see here on the image, the left-hand image. You will be timed. So you will normally have about 25 to 30 minutes to complete a number of different questions. You might have the likes of deductive tests. So that's where you're looking at possible outcomes are explored and discounted, and then only one possible solution can be had. So if you think of your Sudoku or Sudoku tests, that is your inductive reasoning, your deductive reasoning. This one here on your right-hand side, where you might be familiar with seeing things like this, where you've got your patterns, this is more of your inductive reasoning. So it's open and explorative, and it's really looking at you coming up with the next solution based on reasonable probability. So you're obviously looking at working out what the next possible pattern might be. So really these tests give us that indication of how a person might perform in a work setting. So this will reduce the number in terms of applications that we see coming through. So before I get on to how we then differentiate the answers, my advice to you, if anyone is taking any of these tests, ensure you have no distractions. So they are a timed test. You only get one shot at it. Make sure you have no distractions. It's a good time of the day. You've not come home after a day's study or a day's work and tried to complete these. Plenty of practice tests. So when you're invited to do these, typically you'll gain access to a number of different tests that you can practice as well. Now, things like your numerical, your verbal reasoning, things like that, they can be improved But generally that would actually mean going and doing extra training in the likes of with numbers. It means the work that you would do if you're getting involved in numbers on a day-to-day basis, that will improve your score in this. Things like your deductive and inductive reasoning is more about taking more and more tests. It's actually a harder skill to learn because it's how your brain works in terms of problem solving. Looking at the ability test results. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, this is obviously the bell curve diagram, and this looks at plotting out a normal distribution of answers. So what we'll do with your results from your, the various tests that you take is we will plot them against a representative group. And that group will be, say, 100 people that are university leavers, intern level, and it will plot the answers. Now, obviously, you'll find the majority of people will fall within the average performers, but you will get on opposite ends of the spectrum your pocket of high performers and low performers. So typically, each company will have a cutoff point to which they will not accept people further past this process. Now, for your understanding, that's normally around, to put it into perspective, below a third class honours level, you would assume for these different tests. So again, this is what we would focus on, is pulling forward those that are average performers to high performers as well. So anyone below that, we would tend to remove from the process at that stage. Moving on to the occupational personality questionnaire. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on this slide, and that really is because of the importance now in personality. So several decades ago in your hiring process, the focus was very much on your CV. What school did you go to? What grades did you get? What experience do you have in the field? What are your technical qualifications? So this is the stuff that hiring managers would be most focused on. Personality type, your cultural fit, that played less of a part in the process. That has actually evolved over the years now. So your personality and your cultural fit are now key components. And these statistics, if you're reading through them, will attest to that. After all, your technical skill can't be taught. It can be taught, sorry, but your right outlook simply can't be. So it is very important that we consider the personality. So we use the likes of these personality assessments to provide us with an insight regarding how you might behave in the workplace. And that will allude to your job performance. Now, you get a whole variety of different personality assessments, and apologies, but I did study psychology, so this part really excites me. So if I drag on, I do apologise. So you've got your variety of different ones. Now, for those with a small screen, apologies if this is not great, but this is the Myers-Briggs 16 type personality. So you'll get a variety of different personality assessments, and they will group you into different groups. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to actually, if you actually look up Myers-Briggs animal quiz or personality quiz, you can go and do this. And I strongly encourage this because of what Ross said about his bio. You want to try and get as much of your personality out without using the standard jargon that you get. I'm very experienced, I'm very motivated. We want to try and pull away from that and get your personality out to set you aside from the crowd. So I would encourage you to do this. But the reason I've put this slide up, if you are able to see it, is you've obviously got different animals. Now, this first letter that you see, each animal has 4 letters. You can then go and read up those letters in much more detail around work context, relationship context, and manager context. And that will give you a lot of feedback as to your sort of perhaps limitations or areas where you shine within those, so that you can be aware of those. But I'm going to give you an example. Let's say we are looking for a business development manager. So obviously personality to us is going to be key in this. So let's take, we've got 2 people that have applied for this role. Let's take the beaver and the ant have applied for this role. So here you have your beaver. So the first letter you'll see on the beaver's letter is the ESTP. He's an E. Now the E stands for extrovert, so introvert, extrovert. So that's the first part of the measure. So your beavers are typically smart and energetic, great entrepreneurs, solid people skills, and excellent in sales, best suited for careers that don't require a lot of routine. So this person would likely excel in a business development role because they have that personality that pushes them or interests them to sell, to become great entrepreneurs, to work with people, to influence people. Whereas the ant has applied, the ant being practical, factual, organised, and logical. Now, ants are great problem solvers and thrive in careers that are heavy in facts, numbers, and data. Now, you could have both in that role, absolutely, but what you'd find is that the ant would need to constantly work on his or her preferred style to have a chance of doing well in that job. And neither would the job be liked by the person, nor would the employer get the performance that they were expecting either. So it would push them out of their comfort zone on a regular basis. And I suppose twofold here, the employer is wanting someone that enjoys this, but equally from an employee's perspective, you want to be in a role that you're going to excel at and enjoy, because if you're underperforming in your role, there's no enjoyment in that. So that's why it's important to understand your personality and find those roles that suit that as well, because it's not going to be a good outcome for either of you if you start applying for roles that don't suit your sort of interests. Just looking at our values then, because obviously this will coincide with what we're looking for in terms of a personality. So if you've had a look at our website, you'll note that these are our core values, our sort of core behaviours. Most companies nowadays will advertise what their values are. So again, before you go to an interview, check in on their website, understand what their values are, and make sure that sits well with you. If that doesn't sit culturally well with you, you're not going to fit well into that organisation, and it's maybe not the right place for you. But just taking a quick look at these, so care, this is where you feel responsible for ourselves, our colleagues and our community. We respect each other and trust is placed in us. Your agility, so we are a small organisation and fairly new in inception, so we are nimble, we're curious and we're innovative. We welcome new perspectives and we're willing to change course to improve. We don't stand still. So for example, those that do not like change, are feel uncomfortable with change, this probably wouldn't be the right culture, because actually we actively encourage change and we encourage people to question how we do things and see if there's ways to improve. Courage, so we hold ourselves accountable, we challenge conventional thinking and we face our fears head on. Delivery, hugely important, so we look for simplistic, efficient, innovative and continuous improvement. So this one, we try and set up all of our teams to be able to deliver. And then your collaboration. So we work as one team across our disciplines in geography, and we seek out views of mutual understanding, even from our harshest critics. So that kind of gives you a sense of what our values are. And looking at our culture. So I'll give you a moment to just have a wee read through some of these. And some of these would be obvious that you'd expect, but some maybe not so much. So things like highlight stupid rules and go home if you need to. Bring your dog to work. You know, we eat cake on a Friday, or we certainly did until COVID hit. Although I still do eat cake, but just not in a group. So these are what we stand for. And so this is what we look for in our people. We want you to be agile. We want you to be held accountable and be confident in sharing your ideas. So this is really what our culture is. And that is very important for us to find someone that is going to fit within that culture. Because if you get someone that doesn't fit within that culture, that can lead to lesser quality performance. It can also create a negative work environment. It only takes one person with that negative outlook to bring down the morale of a whole team or even a company. So this part is very important for us. Looking at the questionnaire that we use then. So we use SHL and they provide us with this occupational personality questionnaire. This works slightly different to your other personality questionnaires, whereas it doesn't put you in a type, doesn't put you in a box. You're not a beaver and an ant. You are very much on a scale in terms of your preferences within different dimensions. And these would be within your relationships with people, your thinking style, and your feelings and emotions. Now this questionnaire, if you're ever asked to do it, it is a self-report questionnaire. So it's based on your own self-perception. So we'd always encourage you for two reasons to fill this in accurately and honestly as possible. One, because of everything I've just said around if you end up applying for a role that doesn't suit your personality or doesn't fit with your culture, you're not going to have that performance and you're not going to enjoy that role. Equally, these types of roles, they'll have a consistency element to it. So if you try and fob the questions and link them to how you think you should be answering, there's a consistency element to that, and that'll tell us how consistent you've been with your answers, because a lot of these will repeat themselves in different ways. So if your consistency rating is low, chances are you've tried to cheat the system and come up with what you think is the right answer for these rather than actually what you feel. And we can sort of assess whether you've distorted that assessment or not. I've actually taken a snippet out from my own OPQ to give you an understanding of what we then receive. So we will get 32 of these. This one is within the analysis of thinking style. We'll get 32 of these different elements. Now we will already have focused on what is important for the role. So whilst you can't fail a test because it's merely understanding your preferences, because we'll actually look at certain competencies, if you have less of a preference in that area, that role probably won't suit you as much. And we'll take an overall view, not just one within one particular area, but just having a look at this and considering my role. So I work in resourcing. My job is to interview people. So certain behaviors, things like my behavioral. So you'll see there, I am an 8 there, which means I have a strong preference to understand motives and behaviors and enjoy analysing people. So that's probably quite a good thing because most of my job boils down to understanding people's motives and behaviour and analysing people. So if I had come in a number 1 there, if I really don't question the reason for people's behaviour and don't analyse, I probably wouldn't be suited to this type of role. You'll see my evaluative is just slightly on the sort of the lower end of the scale in terms of I dislike critically analysing information. Now I'm aware of that. So when it comes to reviewing candidates, I have to check that and make sure that I am critically analysing that. So it gives me that awareness to make sure I'm following that fair process. So again, that just gives you an overview of what we see, and that helps us understand where in the scale you would sit in terms of your preferences. The interview, I've just pulled up this question because again, everyone has a different interview style. I would love to see that IKEA actually did this for their job interviews. I think that would be good. But the way that we interview, I'm going to take you through now. Right before you even arrive for an interview, we've come up with a specific question set. We encourage our hiring managers to take the lead on coming up with the technical job-specific questions. What they'll be doing here is they are identifying key themes. So if you can read that clearly enough, this is actually the example I give to a hiring manager. So let's say we're hiring a special agent at 007. Unfortunately, we don't. It would be great if we did. Looking at taking the themes for that role, what do we need that person to be able to do in role? So we're looking at gadgets, and then what they'll do is they will take questions to help them build that theme. So if they've got an area, now this one might be a specific engineering theme if it's an intern role, and they'll be driving questions to understand what knowledge and experience you have in that area. And what you'll also see here are some key indicators for those that are within the box that are smaller in size. That is really us understanding if you've hit the mark in terms of your answers, and it helps us know whether we need to probe further or whether you've answered that question well. And you'll see the scoring section there as well of 1 to 5, which I will come back to in more detail. Now looking at the behavioural competency type questions. So the question here, tell me about a time where you have coached or trained someone less experienced than you, so they understood what they had to do. And these questions with hyphens, these are prompting questions for us. So this is a question that we ask in terms of our behavioural questions, not to everyone, but this is one of our questions in our bank. So we will say what worked well, what worked less well, how did you feel about training and coaching them? So we may need to prompt these questions if we're not getting a full answer as well. Now, these would be the key indicators that we're looking for. And this is not all of what we're looking for, but in terms of your response, these are the types of things we're looking for. So we want to see that you speak in an encouraging manner to others, an understanding of ways of how to motivate others, clearly and definitely what people have to do, and invest appropriate trust in others to undertake individual responsibilities, points out behaviour that falls below expected standard. So it sounds really obvious, but when you're asked a question, think about why are they asking that question? What do they want to get from you? Before I'm asking a question like this, chances are part of your role will involve coaching or training, or may do in the future, and I want to assess your potential. So really think about the question that's being asked. What am I looking for? I want to understand that you're comfortable in that domain and that you have the skills to do that effectively. Looking at what else we're looking at, quite a lot on the screen, but let's just take you through some of the elements. So were your answers aligned to the key indicators as we've just discussed? How recent were the examples given? So this is looking at, I have a kind of hierarchy of examples. So early careers, a lot of you will still have some form of work experience, be it part-time work, internship experience, that type of thing. My hierarchy is I'm looking for work-based examples because they will give me the best overview of transferable skills. From there, I would look for study-based examples, so your time at university or college. Thereafter, I'd be looking for any personal, home, team sport, where you've been involved in a team, extracurricular activity examples. Now, the reason for that is, if you give me a work example, I can transfer that straight over, because your behaviours can differ in the workplace compared to at home. And some personality tests will put you, showing you what you're consciously like at work and what you're unconsciously like at work, like where you have to push yourself to perhaps be more extroverted at work, whereas at home, you naturally fall more introverted. So if I was to ask you the question, can you give me an example of a difficult person that you've had to deal with? Your response to work-based colleague might be different to a response to an annoying neighbour that you might have down the road. So that's why a work-based example works best for me. How recent were the examples given? So I'm really looking for one in the last year, ideally. If you're going to give me examples that take me back to when you were at high school, I'm going to be less inclined to take them because a lot can change. You've had a lot of experience and exposure to different environments since then. So I'm looking for more recent. The relevant piece was obviously around the hierarchy. How varied were the examples offered? So come the end of the interview, I want to do an overview of, did you give me one stellar example, but use it throughout? Because then that really only sets you up in one area. And I've got no understanding of any other examples, so I can't really put that into context. Or did you give me a host of examples? You know, each question had a different example of how you've, a very good example of how you've, your behaviour was very effective. So I'm looking at that at the end of the interview to sum up. How effective was the candidate's behaviour? So this comes down to the STAR piece, the results, and what did you do? Now, one thing, if I'm going to give you one piece of advice to take away today, do not use the word we when you're answering these questions. So if I ask you, can you give an example of a time where you worked well as part of a team? I do not want to hear, yes, well, we did this example, it was fantastic, we took this idea to the board and they really bought into it, it was great, and then we delivered it. Okay, well, that's great, but what did you do? And that's what I need to understand, is what was your key involvement. If you don't tell me that, your interviewer might not delve into that further. I normally will, but other interviewers might not, and they don't have a sense of what you've specifically done and the accomplishments that were achieved because of that. So then we're looking at overall, how much commitment and passion had you demonstrated? Because again, this is important to Spirit, is that you didn't do a job just because you were told to. I want to hear that passion and commitment come through in your responses. And all of these things will take you to the scoring key for each question, and that will give us a score. So at the end of each interview, if it's a virtual one, we'll say goodbye to you, and then we'll all sit and talk about the interview for the next 20 minutes. And we'll go through every single question, and we will give it a score on how well you answered. At the end, we will add that up, as you'll see here, the overall candidate assessment, and we will give you a score, because 9 times out of 10, that score will reflect, when you've interviewed 5 people, that this was the top interview, and that will reflect in the scores that we've got. There may be some outliers where we felt they didn't demonstrate themselves as well for maybe a personal reason that was explored and that was covered. But generally, the highest score will be the person that did the best in the interview and put themselves across in the best way. So tips for virtual interview. Obviously, we're living in a different world. This has become the new norm for us. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of different tips for you around virtual interviews. First impressions matter. Now, typically when you show up to an interview, it's that first 30 seconds. If you've read about the psychology, everyone's got a different number of seconds, but it's that immediate feeling you'll get from someone coming into the room, shaking your hand, smiling, and setting that rapport. That still happens with a virtual interview. So try and focus on that small talk at the start to help set the scene. Eye contact, smile, that's a good first impression. Find a professional setting. Now, unfortunately, I can't attest to this because I am in my bedroom, a spare bedroom right now, which is not ideal. I would encourage you to try and find a good setting. It might be your kitchen, living room, where your backdrop is suitable. Now, at Spirit, we're less focused on this. We are a more informal company, but this is more speaking from other companies that may push for that. Refer to your notes. Now, the advantage of doing an interview virtually is you can have all your notes in front of you, just like I have mine right now. and you can refer to them. So I'd encourage you, think of some good examples of where your behaviours have shone, write them down so that when they ask you for an example of a time you worked well with a team, difficult person, worked under pressure, you've got them to hand, they're right there. Have your CV in front of you, have the job description in front of you, it's all there and it's nice and easy. But equally, if this was a face-to-face interview, I would still encourage you to take notes. My first question I will always ask someone, what do you know about spirit energy? Talk to me about spirit. And that's me checking, have you done your homework? How committed are you to this interview? I would much prefer if you took your notebook out and say, actually, yeah, I've taken down some notes. Would you mind if I referred to them? Not at all. I'm thinking, great, you've not just researched this on your phone on the bus journey into this interview, you've actually sat down and given this a lot of thought. And you've not just gone onto our website, you've looked at some news articles and other elements. So that, for me, you've already won a brownie point because you've done that. But coming back to the virtual piece, look at the lens. Now, at the moment, 9 times out of 10, people will just look at the video of the person that's speaking. So if you're uncomfortable with trying to look at a lens, move that video icon up so it's as close to the lens as possible so that you get the sense that you're speaking to the person rather than looking at a different screen, like I'm doing, unfortunately, just now. Notice body language. So this is the difficulty with a virtual interview. If you tend to go on too long in a question, you maybe not pick up that subtleties of the interviewer is trying to move on, or actually the interviewer would like to ask a follow-up question. So just try and be mindful, watch their body language, sense that they may actually want to interrupt. On that part, make sure when you're answering your questions, you are not going into the reels of a story. You want to concentrate on that star element so that it's nice and succinct but gives all the information. Dress appropriately, again, not so fussed at Spirit as to what you might wear. We don't place a huge emphasis on work attire. For other interviews, you'll obviously want to dress appropriately, and emulating that sort of suited and booted effect, it will make you feel more the part as well, rather than sitting there in gym clothes, for example. So you probably will find you'll treat it slightly differently. Test your headphones, make sure all of that works so that you've not got that first 5 minutes of trying to play about with making sure they can hear you. And practice, practice, practice. Really encourage you to say out loud the answers. You can think them in your head, but until you've actually said them out loud, you'll realise, actually, that wasn't a very good example, or maybe I didn't go into enough detail. That will really help you. And practice doing virtual interviews. Practice with each other, practice with friends, family members, to get understanding of what it's like to interview virtually. Looking at assessment centres. Now, we'll only use assessment centres for our intern roles. Now, we were due to have assessment centres this year, but obviously COVID hit, so things look slightly differently this year. But normally, if you were invited to an assessment centre, we would send you out a full pack. You'll get a video of me at the start talking to you about it, so that you have all the information about Spirit that you might need and what to expect on the day. But to give you an understanding, our assessment centres normally would be across 2 days. We would normally have 10 candidates per session, so that's 20 in total, or what is normally around 6 to 7 roles. So we would be asking you to do a technical presentation. So I'll be utilising some information given to you on the day, as well as your own knowledge. You'll be asked to consider some topical questions and present your recommendations. So you will essentially have a 1 hour period to receive some information, normally technical, and you will come back to us with a response, and we will then question you on that. So it really is, it's looking at your problem solving ability, your ability to work under pressure, and also looking at some of the experience and knowledge that you can draw upon already. Your interview, so you'll be asked to answer some questions relating to your skills, attributes, and previous experience to help us gauge your suitability for that. The technical presentation and interview are normally done at the same time by the same people. You'll also be asked to do a group exercise. So you'll work with your other candidates and you'll come up with some answers and recommendations based around a certain challenge. Now, this challenge, we will normally give you information ahead of time so that you can come up with your own ideas. And then we will encourage you to work in smaller teams and then larger teams. And this is really looking at your ability to influence, to work well as part of a team, work well under pressure, all of these key skills that are important for this type of role. So that will allow us to understand whether you'd be suitable for an internship at Spirit. Now, our internships, we don't hire graduates straight off the bat, we will use our internship program to drip feed through our graduates. So from our 6 interns, we will usually take 2 graduates on from that. So that's how we do our graduate recruitment. At the moment, that may change. So the candidates who demonstrate their personal best during an assessment centre do so because they prepare in advance, understand our business, the role, and have put some thought into how to present a clear and authentic picture of themselves. They throw themselves into the event, so they demonstrate energy and an appetite to take part during the activities. Even for those introverts, it really is key that you get your personality across as much as you can. If you are in the back of the room, not actively taking part, you won't succeed through the process. They're true to themselves, so be yourself on the day rather than what you think we need to see. So again, push yourself out your comfort zone, but don't, if your natural style is to be introverted, don't try and lead the group. It won't feel comfortable for you and it won't be authentic. So you have to be conscious of that as well. So just looking at today's mock interviews, I know we're going to go into some detail about these interviews as well in the next session, but just want to give you an overview. And Mustafa, I've kindly used your picture here because it's one of my favourites. Your mock interview will last 20 minutes. I will tell you there are only 4 questions that we're asking you, 3 of which will be competency based. So it's not going to be a quick fire interview. You will have time to answer each of the questions, and we will follow that with a 10-minute feedback session. You will have 2 people interviewing you from Spirit. That is our standard way. We would never normally have 1 person interviewing. It's always good that you would have 2, and that would give us the ability to then bounce ideas off each other in terms of responses. Now for these interviews, we do have 1 person that will have had a good bit of interviewing experience, and the other employee is going to be someone who is lighter on interview experience. So this is a good opportunity for them to work with you around the interview and to give you their honest feedback, having had limited experience as well. So this will be how it's set up. They will provide you with that feedback. Now normally we will provide feedback to candidates generally if they have been unsuccessful. If you've been successful, you wouldn't normally require feedback because you know you've done a good job. If you've been unsuccessful, we would use that time to go through each question and then come up with some constructive feedback to contact you with on a later date. Now we are going to be asking our Spirit employees to give you this feedback straight away, so bear with us in that respect, because it isn't easy to immediately give feedback on an interview. But they've got a lot of information to go on in terms of how to sort of accurately score your interview, so there shouldn't be any issues there. Where possible, we'll look to have that as a video interview, but if we're having any technical bandwidth issues, we'll revert to audio. But where possible, at least 1 of our interviewers will hopefully have their video switched on. Much easier to see someone when speaking to them. So some last minute tips for you for those that are involved in today's mock interviews. Have your CV and some notes to hand. We don't have your CVs, we've actually left it so that you can talk us through it fresh. So we want to hear from you fresh in terms of your CV. Take some notes, have some of those examples. Consider your location. Test your equipment first to make sure that you can be seen and heard. Take your time identifying good examples. So we're not looking for your fastest example, we're looking for your best one. So you think about it. I am more than happy for a candidate to pause for a minute, silence, while they come up with a really good example. I encourage that rather than firing into an example just to fill the void that it wasn't the best example. And I'm saying don't worry about asking questions, and that is because in a normal interview situation you'd have the opportunity to ask interview questions. You know, what training do you offer? When will I receive feedback? Can you tell me more about this aspect of the role? Because this is a mock interview and obviously a fictitious role, we're not asking you to ask questions, so you don't need to panic about finding some good questions to ask. And smile, obviously, just be mindful of body language for the interview. Ask questions as you go through the feedback session, take notes. Hopefully it will be a useful session for yourselves. Thank you very much. Appreciate that I have talked for about 40 minutes non-stop, so hopefully you're all still with me. Do we have any questions?
So, yeah, morning. Right. So I don't think I got this, but you mentioned that the graduate program, you don't take people who are just applying, you take the ones you've just taken in the internship before. Is that?
Typically, that is certainly what we've done. Now, obviously, we're in a different world at the moment, so we are exploring some other opportunities for our internship programs, which may then change how we do our graduate programs. So I'm sure a number of you will be familiar with UDrafter. So we're looking at possible micro internships. So that we're looking at a variety of different ways, because we appreciate that in the world we live in, the standard summer internship program may not work for next year. So that's something we're actively working on, but don't have what that outcome will be yet. But in days gone by, yes, we would use our internship program to really help us find our 2 graduates. We are a smaller organisation. We don't take on a lot of grads. So it really is important for us to find the right 2 grads per year to take on. And that program does help us.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ashley. That
No
was
problem.
really, 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 I mean, just, speaking about the entry people and the experienced people was quite insightful. If you've got any questions, because I didn't see anyone type into the chat, just in case you don't want to.
Yeah, actually, I have one question. QUESTIONNAIRE. I like the slide on the personalities. Actually, when I saw the meerkats, I started wondering about car insurance. But yeah, but personally, I struggle to fit myself into one of those. I wonder, am I an ant, or does it vary with different people?
So if you go on to it's Myers-Briggs. Now they've done their personality and they've converted it. You do it with animals, you do it with Game of Thrones characters, Simpsons characters. You may have seen them. But if you look up the Myers-Briggs personality test, you can do the questions and they will tell you where you fit based on that. Now the limitations of these type is that they do assume that given your responses, you'll fit within one bucket. As I said, in some cases, you might be slightly different in a work environment than you would be at home. So you need to focus on, if you are going to be doing the personality test, focus on how you would be in a work environment answering those questions. And there's 4 dimensions to it. As I said, the first is the introvert extrovert. And there's the judging, perceiving, there's different elements to it, but that will give you your animal. And I've done it with my family. It is fascinating because it gives you an insight into yourself that you perhaps didn't appreciate. And you go, actually, yes, that is me. So I, for example, am a dolphin. And having read more about it, it's helped me understand why I am the way I am with certain respects in workplace. I need constant change. I love to be challenged. I love to be told, right, we're going to do this differently. How can we improve on this? That's where I shine, is staying in the process and improving it, which means that I fit in very well, or I certainly hope I do, at Spirit, because I get the scope to do that. I get the scope to go and change things. And my days are different literally every day. So I don't have that job whereas the ant would be, quite comfortable doing the same type of role every day, quite the elements where you're going to be doing similar stuff all the time. That can suit some and not others. So find out more about yourselves if you haven't already, and articulate that in your CV, so that we can see culturally and behaviourally how you might fit within our organisation.
Okay, thank you.
I do find that the psychology fascinating. That's why I probably spent more time on that one, because there is so many elements to it. And when you are on this side of the interview table and you see 5 different candidates straight after one another, and the differences in the interview style, the rapport that you build with them, their responses can be night and day. So I love analysing people. So I'm very well suited to recruitment. So it's very useful tool.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoyed that session. Just interesting to see how the extroverts and the introverts come alive at interviews as well. Okay, so it's 10:45 now, and I'm just going to ask for the very last time if anybody has a question. Ashley, are you happy to, I don't know if people want to ask later on, or maybe the slides, if, someone said, will the slides be available after the event? I'll leave that for you.
Yes, I'm happy. I think I have already shared a more up-to-date version. I'm always tinkering and changing it. So I think today's version is sent over. So yes, I'm happy for those to be shared. And actually on those slides, there is an email address at the end of those slides for the resourcing inbox. And that's probably your best bet in terms of where to do that responses to, but I will also pop it in here as well for you.
Okay, that's awesome. Anyone else got any? Okay, so that's resourcing@spiritenergy.com. Thank you so very much. If you got any questions, we're still taking questions, so just pop it down the chat. And I just want to, I'll just quickly share my screen. We will be doing an afternoon session, as most of you on the call know. And for the interview session, Ashley has pretty much nailed everything. She's, spoken about what they require. I know what they require, your etiquette. I mean, things you should and shouldn't do as well. Muting your microphones, positioning your camera properly, and all of those things. What I'm going to do now is, based on the attendance, I'm going to share my screen to let people know what slots they're going to be in. And also feel free to still put your questions in the chat so we can pick it up and direct it to whoever's. And these questions can be on any of the speakers who have spoken, from Ashley to Ross to even Mark, who sent the video. So you can kindly do that, just put in the chat. But what I'll do right now is I'm gonna share my screen, because some people who registered or not. I will just put my, if you can see my screen, just let me know.
Yep.
My screen.
Oh.
Okay. Should I increase it? Can you see it properly?
I might need to increase the size a bit more.
Okay. I'll just do that. So please, for the candidates, if you please pay attention here, just so you know your slots and your times to come back, because we're going to take a break now and we'll be getting people to come back. So I'm just going to run through the session. It will pretty much be a 30 minutes session. But what I want us to do is, if you can kindly come back at, so for example, for the very first session, we'll be having Anthony Pickering from Spirit Energy and Stephanie Pascal assisting. Shegun Ayileka, you'll be the candidate for, so you're going to go into breakout room 1. So you're going to come at you're actually going to come in at 1:20, because we're going to be having a session, like a 10-minute squeeze time before you go into the session. So please, if you can, if your session is supposed to be for 1:30, please make it in time at 1:20. So Shegun, you'll be meeting with Anthony Pickering and Stephanie Pascal. Kale, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Kale Tatiko, you will be meeting with Matthew Uhi and Michael Ryan. Presheet, you will be meeting with Craig Knight and Leah Bentley. Chukwemeka, you will be meeting with Mustafa Mohammed and Ruby. Gbemisola, you'll be meeting with Ashley McDonald and Ross Marshall. If you can, please note that. So those people at that slot time are for 1:30, kindly come in at 1:20, because there's a 10 minutes before the actual session. And I mean, once you come in, we would know where to put you. So Shegun, you go into breakout room 1. Kaletiko, you go into breakout room 2. Presheet, you go into breakout room 3. Chukwemeka, you go into breakout room 4, just like that, wherever your room number states here. And then I'm just going to, and then Mina, you go into breakout room 1. So you're going to be meeting with Anthony. I'm looking at this right now, if you can't tell. So Mina, you're meeting with Anthony and Steffi, sorry. Dominic, you're meeting with Matthew and Michael in breakout room 2. Ali, you'll be meeting with Ross McDonald and Leah Bentley. They will be your assessors. Sohila, you will be meeting with Mustafa and Ruby. They will be your assessors. And Chris, you'll be meeting with Ashley and Ross in breakout room 5. So like I mentioned, your slot is from 2:10 to 2:40, but you will need to come in at 2 p.m. if that makes sense, because there's a 10-minute session before then. So if you kindly write that down. For slot 3, which is at 2:50, you will be coming in at 2:40. And for that one, there are just 3 rooms going to be for that session. And that would be Jacob meeting with Anthony and Steffi, Michael meeting with Sheila and Michael, and then Alon, sorry, I'm really sorry about if I mispronounce your name, Alon Lobby Loba, you'll be meeting with Ross and Leah. So that will be breakout 1, 2, and 3. Can you kindly let me know or signify if I haven't mentioned your name? If you're on the call and I haven't mentioned your name and you registered, if you let me know, I'll just stop sharing my screen. Or if anyone wants to take any notes, if you need to, I can just keep going. Just in case you need to write down your slot. So whatever you see here, whatever timings you see at the very top here, you're just going to come 10 minutes before because there's a quiz session. And there will be, I believe everyone has the link to the afternoon session because the afternoon session link is different from this one. So I'll just stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone. So if there's anyone I haven't mentioned, if you kindly send me your name so I put you into the slots for the afternoon session. The Zoom link has been put on the chat, as well as the meeting ID and the passcode. So the interview room, someone asked a question, how do you access our interview rooms? You don't need to access your interview rooms. Once you come in, they would put you automatically into the breakout room to your assessors. So that would be automatic. I believe that's all for this afternoon. Thank you so much, Ashley MacDonald. That was really a really great session, especially on the personality test. Thank you, Ross. I'm not sure if you're, yeah. Thank you very much, Ross. And also Susan as well. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. So if everyone has taken note of their times, we'll just take a break. And for the first group of people, you're coming back at 1:20 instead of 1:30. So each session is a 30-minute session. Ashley's already said everything. I don't need to go in depth. She's already said everything and how the structure is going to be. So for the people who are coming on the 1:30 session, you come in at 1:20. For those who are coming, you just come 10 minutes before your time. Is that okay? Does anyone have any questions lastly?
Yeah, well, not a question, but just a comment from myself. I just want to especially thank Spirit Energy for this event, for all the volunteers and speakers. Special thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. It's been interesting speaking to my computer screen for 40 minutes, but hopefully it was good.
And I see Ollie is on the, okay, sorry, Mustafa, did you?
No, sorry, I thought you'd finished. Apologies, Judy. I'll wait till you finish. Apologies.
No, I'm done actually. You have a...
Yeah, it was just a quick comment. When we do the interviews later, just based on what happened earlier with the technology, that if it starts to go down, we'll try and keep our videos open. But if the sound quality starts to struggle, we'll sacrifice the video. So just so you know, because we'll want to see you, we'll want you to see us because of what Ashley was mentioning during the brief. But in case the technology does start to fade, the thing that we will sacrifice is the video, just so that we can hear you, because that's critical for obviously for the interview. So that just so I'll mention that as an extra.
Yeah, and also just one more thing. If anyone has an issue, I believe there's an ask for help functionality in the breakout rooms. So maybe just use that if there are any technical issues during the interviews. And also I see Ollie is on the call. I don't know if you want to share a few comments or thoughts.
Oh, not much. Only to say thank you to everyone who's spoken. It's been excellent listening in, and well done, Mo and Judy, and everyone as well.
Okay.
And just reiterating again, thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, Ross. Thank you to all our speakers for today. Really great session. And if I can just remind candidates who are coming in the afternoon to rename your Zoom name to what you registered with, so we know who we're inviting in, because I mean, we're going based on the list you registered with, the names you registered with. So if you can rename yourself, for example, if you have like Galaxy 8, we wouldn't know who Galaxy 8 is. So if you just rename your Zoom names to yourselves, we'll be able to admit you in. So once you come in, we'll be able to put you in breakout rooms. So I believe everyone has noted their breakout rooms. If you need me to share the list again, I can do that. If you just signify to let me know, that should be fine. I can just share the list one last time, just in case anyone missed it. That's pretty much it. There'll be 5 breakout rooms. If you just note. So each slot is
Mo,
could you also add more? Would there still be a quiz just before the?
Oh yeah, I mentioned that. So
mentioned
at
that,
10 minutes too. So for example, for the 1:30 session, there's going to be a quiz at 1:20. Yes, so for the quiz, thank you for reminding me, Chidi. For the quiz, if you can come in with 2 devices, that will be very good. When I say 2 devices, if you're using a computer, you can come in with your phone. That's where you're going to do the quiz. Or if you don't have 2 devices and you're using your computer, you can just go to a different tab, which is not a problem at all. But yes, 1 device if it's your computer, or 2 devices, your laptop or your phone or your iPad or your phone. So before each session, there'll be a 10-minute session for the quiz. So for example, like I mentioned, if your slots are 1:30, you come in at 1:20 for the quiz. It's a 10 minutes quiz, and then you go on into your breakout rooms for your session. So same thing with slot 2, you come in 10 minutes before, so you come in at 2 p.m. Same thing with slot 3, you come in at 2:40, and like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. So why do you mention that you have to come with 2 devices for the quiz?
Oh yes, because you're going to go to a different website for the quiz, but Zoom will still be going on. So you can look at Zoom and you can do the quiz on your device, really. But like I said, if you're using a laptop, that's fine. You can always open it on the tab, because Zoom's going to be as an app, and you can open a different tab. So it's not mandatory, but it's beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. I think someone was asking what's the quiz for. So it's basically to test your knowledge.
Oh, it's just to test your, because like Ashley said, it's good to kind of have a broad knowledge about things, the place you're applying to. So it's really just a quiz. You're not going to be assessed. It's nothing serious, but it's going to be fun. I'll say that.
And I'll say in advance, I couldn't get all of them right, which is concerning. But no, not too different.
Yeah, so I'll just stop sharing my screen now. I believe everyone's written where they come in. So yeah, if I haven't mentioned your name, or if I haven't written your name, kindly send me a private chat. And because this session is going to be closing, because it's a different link. This session is going to be closing. So if you can do it before we actually close, that would be really good. Oh, someone said, what was the quiz for? Or was that before I answered? I'm not sure.
I think that was.
I think you answered.
Yes, you answered. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So the interviewers, I'm going to send you the updated list so you know as well. I'll send that to you by email. So yeah. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. The speakers, the candidates for also listening as well. Thank you for also the volunteers, AFB and both Spirit Energy as well. So we will see you in the second session. So each person, if you're 1:30, like I said, be back for 1:20. Thank you so much, everyone.